Welcome to the Nations vs. Nonprofits Weekly Briefing. This is your weekly briefing number 11, Why the Confederated Villages of Lisjan Did Not Exist Before 2018. Many people assume that contemporary Indigenous nonprofits represent long-standing tribal governments. That assumption often comes from repetition rather than records. One of the most persistent examples in the Bay Area is the claim that the Confederated Villages of Lisjan existed as a tribal government before 2018. When you examine how existence is established in the historical and administrative record, that claim does not hold. Tribal nations are governments. Their existence is demonstrated through documented continuity across time. This includes leadership structures, enrollment processes, governance documents, elections, and appearance in contemporaneous records such as government correspondence, consultation lists, and archival materials. These records show when a government exists, how it functions, and whether it continues from one generation to the next. Ethnographic names and self-descriptors do not establish tribal governments. Early 20th century field notes record local terms that people used to describe themselves, their neighbors, or the places they lived. These terms were fluid, overlapping, and situational. They describe language use, local identity, or geography, not political authority or governance. In the late 20th century, scholars reclassified and renamed indigenous languages and groups for analytical purposes. They often relied on limited field notes and explicitly hypothetical boundaries. They were not discoveries of historical documents, and they do not demonstrate political continuity. Language classification also does not create sovereignty. Research shows that Cosanoan languages formed a dialect chain, with gradual transitions between neighboring communities rather than fixed, closed groups. Linguistic proximity explains communication and contact, not the existence of discrete governing bodies. Treating language names as tribal governments is a category error. When these academic classifications and ethnographic terms are projected backward as proof of political existence, a retroactive narrative is created. That process replaces documentation with interpretation. Under accepted historical and institutional standards, retroactive naming cannot substitute for evidence of governance. The name Confederated Villages of Lisjan also makes a specific structural claim. A confederation implies multiple member villages joined through some form of agreement or shared governance. That structure would require identifiable villages, evidence of representation or consent, and records showing how those villages act together. No such documentation exists. There is no list of member villages, no articles of confederation, and no record of representation from any other villages. The Confederated Villages of Lisjan does not appear in the historical, legal, or administrative record as the tribal government prior to 2018. There are no governing documents, enrollment records, election certifications, or contemporaneous references placing the Confederated Villages of Lisjan in existence as a government before that time. This absence is not incidental. It reflects that the entity did not exist in governmental form. Nonprofits can be created quickly through corporate filings and brandings. Tribal governments cannot. They require continuity that can be traced through records over time. When nonprofits adopt the language of sovereignty without meeting those standards, it creates confusions for institutions and allies who may not understand the difference. Once you apply the same standards used by historians and institutions, the timeline becomes clear. The Confederated Villages of Lisjan did not exist as a tribal government before 2018. Recognizing that fact is not a judgment of identity. It is a correction grounded in records. Accurate history depends on documentation, not repetition. Thanks for watching this week's briefing. Nations vs. Nonprofits weekly briefings drop every Monday. Tune in for next week's subject, How Schools Misteach Bay Area Native History.